I'm Brian Anderson.
And I'm Bobby Fazio. And welcome to another edition of Class Racing Today's podcast. Thank you for joining us. We have reached 600 followers on our Facebook page, so sounds like we're growing, headed for the positive slope, if you will, coming from the math teacher. Today we have one of our favorites. We have Mike Manns rejoining us today for his technical insight and expertise. Brian and I aren't that smart. We're not that smart, so we have Mike Manns join us. Say hello, Mike.
Hey, guys. How you doing? Thanks for having me back.
All right. Brian, how are you doing this weekend?
I'm doing great. Got to watch a little racing in Vegas. That was pretty interesting. The weather got nice here, so our snow melted, and I think we were 40, 50 degrees. Supposed to be 70 this week. Kind of makes me want to start putting my car back together, but unfortunately we're going to get snow and cold again next week, so I'll have time to do it.
70? I didn't know you guys ever got 70 out there.
Yeah, typically followed by 8.
When did this start?
We like to keep it swinging.
It's a nice range. I like it.
Well, you got to get rid of all the people that want to move to South Dakota for our, lax government restrictions. So everybody's moving here, but we got to keep the weather to keep out. You got to be dedicated if you want to live here.
I know. Do you guys even have taxes in that state?
It's kind of like leap year. Every 4 years you have to pay them.
Oh.
None of this is true.
New Jersey, we have cheap gas. About the only thing that I can boast about in this state.
What's cheap gas to you?
I'm looking at 213 over across the street, which is, I usually, I lived in Pennsylvania my whole life, and I go back there a lot, and we're looking at like 240 there, I think, a gallon for regular.
That's pretty wild, because I think diesel here is right around 215, I think I paid this weekend. And I was in Oklahoma last week, and I filled up my truck for like $1.78. I'm just like, it was incredible, like, what the difference is.
$1.78?
Yeah.
You filled your truck for $1.78?
Yeah, I think it was $1.78 a gallon on the toll road.
My goodness.
In Oklahoma. So why does there have to be that big a difference?
I think it's $1.99 in town now.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
I always like that when like the convenience ones are always like 10 or 15 cents higher, which I totally understand because you're in America, so why not make money where it's convenient? But like my hauler, I hold 90 gallons in my dually. So you fill that up, you can just about make it to the track and back a lot of times. And of course, I always wait until the very end, so then I go by that one gas station that's $2.40 a gallon when everybody else is $2. So if I probably should put in just enough to make it to the next gas station, but what would happen then? So I don't know, it's just it's one of those things you need it. I'm not gonna walk, I'm not gonna ride a horse to work, so put it in and just drive. But definitely it saves a lot of money in the year though. If you think about what you spend in total fuel usage going to the tracks, it's pretty significant.
Saving a lot of money on gas. You should be going 1.2 under next year with all this saved money.
Unfortunately, there's a long list of people that had combinations of like mine, similar combinations that have pretty much made sure that's never going to happen.
Let's ask Mike Manns how you do it. Mike, did you watch any racing this weekend? What'd you do?
I did. So believe it or not, I actually watched pretty much the entire day yesterday, the whole race in Vegas. Normally, I'm not a big sit in front of the TV and watch the race guy anymore. I used to be before, wife and kids and a lot more stuff going on. But there was a lot going on yesterday. It was fun to watch all of the championship point stuff, at least in the pro classes. I think, we had some ties in the pro stock side to watching Jason Line finish out his pro stock career. That was pretty cool. Didn't turn out the way, a lot of his fans and local friends would have liked to seen it, but it is what it is. And he had a pretty awesome career. It was neat to see a guy that, you kind of grew up watching and spending time around, get to have that opportunity. So that was really cool. And then, just kind of watching a lot of the other classes. I know there's some championship stuff in most of the sportsman classes left. I mean, the super stock stuff is tied up. Brian Warner, had a fantastic season, got to lock it up. So that was pretty cool to see that this week. And then the stock eliminator stuff, I think there's some good races coming together. There's some guys putting together some late season phenomenal finishes, and it's going to make it fun to watch here in the next couple of weeks as it winds down with the finish of the Vegas stuff.
Yeah, there definitely some great racing at Vegas this weekend. If anybody did tune into the Vegas National event, or you didn't tune in stock, Justin Lamb in his factory stock D 2020 Camaro got the win over Mike Cotten in his F-Stock automatic car. Does Mike Cotten have a Duster?
I think so.
Yeah. And super stock, Terry Emmons and Brian Warner, two names that you just don't ever want to get paired up against. Terry Emmons in the super stock B stock Cavalier, I believe that one is, and the Protect the Harvest car took the win over Brian Warner. Super stock J automatic. Warner's having, I mean, both of these guys are having like amazing seasons, and Warner just wrapped up the championship and makes it to the final in this event. I mean, they're just might be able to quit their jobs as firemen pretty soon and just race full time. Like, what are you guys doing? Stop working. And factory stock, Aaron Stanfield is just tearing it up. He took the win over David Barton yesterday. Saw that one on TV. That one was actually broadcast on TV when I was watching it. And I DVR'd it, so I watched it a little bit later. So mine cut off before the finals in any other categories. So I don't know if was stock and super stock broadcast on FS1 yesterday, like the Warner Emmons and the Justin Lamb Mike Cotten race. Did you guys take notice if that showed up on TV?
I don't know. I watch it all on that NHRA.TV setup.
Oh,
so.
Okay.
I had to give up my cable subscription when I got a race car.
Now, I watched it on FS1. I didn't re-up my NHRA TV this year because I just like to have it and watch the races that I actually race at to see myself on the big screen because I'm that much of a nerd. But I didn't race any national events this year, so I felt no need to pay my money for that.
Maybe you'd win more races if you weren't watching the in-car. Maybe are you watching the races when you're going down the track? Like,
yeah, I'm holding
got
my
the laptop
iPhone.
set up.
Oh, I can't do that. I don't have eShift, so I can't hold a phone while I'm going down the track. I actually have to do things with my hands. So I maybe next year.
You just can't leave that alone, can you?
Interesting note about the Vegas National event. Mike and Paula Cotten put together their own calcutta. Basically, everyone. I don't know if it was for stock and super stock or just one category. I'm assuming it was for both. They could pay $100 at their trailer, and then it was a winner take all. Whoever got the furthest, got to get all that money. So I don't know how many guys and gals entered that, and I don't know if Justin Lamb entered it. I'm assuming Mike Cotten entered it because he put it on. So one of those drivers got that nice chunk of change to boost the day. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm wondering if more divisions are going to start doing something like that.
That's a great idea. Adds a little bit to the purse,
right? I mean, that's all we've kind of been talking about this year is slashed purses for pros and just non-existent purses for us. So the way contingency is kind of dwindling, I mean, I think this is a nice way to do it. I obviously the winner deserves to get a lot of money. I like to see semifinalists. They really they take a beating to win that semifinal round is such a big boost. I would like to see semifinalists maybe get some of that money or split that money between the remaining 4 cars or something like that would be pretty cool, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean the semis that's the heartbreak round. I mean if you, especially at a national event, you go from 400 or 500 to a couple $1,000.
Right, 4 or 5 grand.
So it's yeah. I mean I've been in a position a couple times where if you make it to the semis and depending on who I'm racing, depending if they're comfortable with it or not, or how I'm feeling that day, I've certainly done kickback to the guy that I'm racing. We'll make an agreement, whichever one of us goes on, we're going to kick back $300-400 to the guy that loses this round. Because obviously both of us are confident that whoever wins between us is probably going to hopefully win the race, and that's kind of the confidence level you're going in with, and then hopefully you're able to send a little bit of that money back to the guy that's just getting taken to the shorts on this payout.
All right, let's stop right there, Mike. You and I race in Brainerd, and I never got any money back, and you won. So I'm going to wave the BS flag there because that was not the case
That
when
was
we
first-
raced. Oh, that's a technicality. Come on,
Yeah, I'm not gonna do a kickback after
Oh.
first round.
man.
Oh, it was first round, Brian. Come on.
Do you want to meet that guy first round, Bobby? Get your illegal transmission out there and go get beat.
Was that a heads up or was that a bracket dial-in?
Yeah, it was not a heads
It
up
was a
against
dial-in.
that car. Dialing.
Okay.
All right, so every other time when you're not racing me is what you do like, right?
But that's it's pretty much reserved for semifinals.
All right, next time this year.
And that's a great. I like that, Mike. I always wondered if people did splits or anything at national events and divisional events. I mean, we did it in bracket racing a lot, and I've done it at combo races, in
Yeah.
finals and things like that. But yeah, semifinal splitting with his opponent, great idea.
I brought that up one time and I was told splitting's for quitting.
Well, let me tell you something. Every time I offered a split and the guy turned it down, I beat him. And every time a split was offered to me and I agreed to it, I beat him. So I don't know. I think it's like a karma kind of thing.
There you go.
I just I would never turn down a split, no matter what.
It's a little different, I think, in stock super stock. There's a lot of guys that have only raced stock super stock, and it's not very common. It's not very traditional in stock super stock to do that. We're in the bracket racing world. That's everyday occurrence. So
Right.
yeah,
These were
there's a lot of-
combo races. These were stock super stock, the Mason Dixon race and
Yeah.
a Dave Lay race. But yeah, a couple times we're in brackets also.
Yeah.
I really want to mention this act of kindness that I don't know if you guys heard about this in Vegas. All right, Mike Graham's running super stock. Third round, his opponent goes red, and Mike's car throws a rod out the pin, and he has the choice of, can I get this thing fixed for Sunday? Can I get a spare motor in here, or do we just call it quits? So Andy Kimball drives 700-ish miles round trip. So he gets in his truck, goes from Vegas to Phoenix area, I guess to Mike Graham's shop, picks up a spare motor, gets right back in his truck, drives. So it was like 350 miles to get there, throws the motor in, 350 miles back, gets back to Vegas. Dennis Alvey helps Mike. So it was Mike Graham, Dennis Alvey, and I think Andy Kimball, maybe a couple other helpers also. And they get this motor in the car for Mike by about 2 a.m. And Mike was able to race on Sunday. He unfortunately had to race against Justin Lamb and did not win that round. But where do you get friends like that? That says a lot about the racing community, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Andy's a great guy. He comes up to our Earlville race and kind of plays around up here. He's friends of friends, so I've pitted next to him, and it seems like this is kind of a heartbreak track for him. It seems like it was Rock Falls. He was here this year. I think he came up for Earlville, and it seems like he always kind of has a similar situation. I think there's been a mechanical issue both years he's come up here, and the same thing though. Everybody piles together and gets his car working. Thrashes on it all night and gets him back in the game, and that's what makes this class and this group of racing so fun. Is I think literally just about anybody is willing to help donate parts or time, or like I said, that's crazy to put in the wheel time, go get the motor and thrash on it all night and get it running. I mean, that's really what makes this great.
That was really, like, if I had an award to give those guys right now, Dennis Alvey, Andy Kimball, Mike Graham, we're neutral here. Okay, we don't root for anybody, but a little part of me was like kind of I just wanted I wanted that to be worth it for those guys. But in the end, and the moral victory is, they won that for sure.
That's great.
Okay, next, Vegas JEGSportsnationals is still going on, right? They're going to finish that at the divisional test and tune on Thursday, November 5th. As far as points are concerned, Jody Lang and Kyle Rizzoli were still in. They were both top 5. I have to double check my new rankings, and Justin Lamb was still in also. Is that correct, Brian and Mike?
I believe so.
I believe so. I think, yeah, Jody and Justin for sure. I don't remember if Kyle was in or not. Probably.
Yeah, Kyle was in going into, they finished round 3 in stock. All the other classes only finished 2 rounds. So as far as I know in my notes from last week, those Jody, Kyle were in, and Justin is in also. Now, Mike, can Justin? Jody's in first right now. Jody lost first round at the national event this past weekend. He can still seal the deal even if Justin Lamb wins the JEGSportsnationals, or what are we thinking here?
The way I was looking at it, I think Justin. So say they both lost at the same round in the JEGSportsnationals, and they still have the divisional event to use. I believe if they both lost the same round, Jody would have an advantage, because I think Jody would still be like 78 points ahead, give or take, and Justin's kicking a 40 divisionally, so he can only get 65 if he wins the divisional event. So the way I read it, he has to go, I think, 2 rounds farther than Jody at the Sports Nationals and potentially win the JEGS, or the last divisional event of the year. So certainly a tall order, but Justin's done it before.
So you're
Right.
saying there's a chance.
With him, there's always a chance. The way he's been driving, I mean, what kind of package did he put up against John McLaughlin yesterday in the 4th round, Sunday morning?
Wasn't it a 10-pack? Wasn't he 5 dead 5?
I think
I
so.
believe so.
I mean, John McLaughlin had a nice 018 light in his stick car, and geez, it was mathematically locked out just from that alone.
Did you? You probably didn't see it. John, first round, had a hell of a run against Alcorta too. That was pretty cool.
Oh yeah, I saw the time slip on that one.
Like, he's been driving pretty good. I was cheering for him. He's the guy that convinced me to get into this crazy game, and that was who I was cheering for. I'm cheering for him next weekend, but it was pretty cool. He went up against Alcorta, and what was the margin of victory? It was like 0007.
Yeah, that was a good race.
I think you're running out of digits at that point.
007.
He's not 007, he's 0007.
All right.
With one of those crazy cheater 4-speeds in there too.
I know. You know what? I'm a big fan of stick cars, and I'm a big fan of slow cars. So, although I say I don't root for anybody on here, I quietly root for stick cars. I quietly root for slow cars, and if you have a slow stick car, then my goodness, just want to shake your hand.
What year Mustang did those Jerichos come in?
64 all the way to 2020. G-Forces came in starting around what, 1979, I think, or 82. 5 speeds.
Yeah, it's funny how that works. I mean, in the automatic side, over the years, guys have had to play by this rule that you run a corporate cased transmission. So, ProTrans developed a heck of an internal set, and that internal gear set and clutch pack and everything that goes with it, that was morphed into a Turbo 350 case to fit into a GM car, and it was morphed into I think a C4 or C6 case to fit into the Ford stuff. So you jump through all these hoops to make it, fit the right bell housing attachments and points for stock and super stock, traditional stock and super stock. And then, we can go buy a Jericho or a G-Force, which
is based off the Ford top loader, by the way.
which has never come in any passenger car. But I guess, got to give them something.
You all love that Ford 9-inch rear, though, don't you?
That to me, so there's a great point. That's one thing that actually, when these factory cars came out, it kind of pissed me off that they allowed a 9-inch Ford in Camaro Copo cars, in the drag pack cars, and the Showdown cars, or the Cobra Jets, which at the first time when they first came out with them, I'm like, okay, they're limited to factory stock classes. And then when the 2015 Camaro became available as a street car package, the class that Alcorta and Marion Stevenson and all them run, now all of a sudden a 9-inch Ford is legal in a 2015 Camaro or anything 2010 and newer. And I thought, well, that's kind of bullshit. How does this work? Anything built after 2010, now you've got a 9-inch Ford legal for it. If I was building a new, I don't know that I would ever build a brand new 2000 Firebird or Camaro right now, but if I did, I would love to put a 9-inch Ford in it instead of a 12 bolt.
Let that make a gear change so easy.
Oh my gosh, your life is so much easier.
Well, like I said, why are rules inconsistent like this, Mike and Brian? I don't understand.
Depends who's making them. I think a lot of times it's
Who's making them?
It's
Fast
factory
Chevy cars or what? Who's making these rules?
It's factory involvement. And I think when the COPO program came out and the factory cars were later adopted, and guys wanted to take a car that was an original COPO car and make it into a 2015 Street Camaro combination to fit natural stock, at the time, I'm sure NHRA, for whatever reason, was like, well, we're already making you change the hood. We don't want to make you change all the suspension and the rear end componentry, so we'll just grandfather you in. And so I think it's legal on all those combinations. Same with the drag packs or 2020 Camaro or 2020 Challengers, I believe, can run a 9-inch Ford also.
Brian, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah. I was actually trying to dig in and look and figure out who's all still in the Vegas race on Thursday.
Yeah.
So I look in here at third round is where they finish. It looked like Cal Method, Mike Johnston, Jeremy Stein, Dwight Mockel, Jeff Jerome, Justin Lamb, Joe Sorensen, Ryan Water, Scott Burton, Kyle Rizzoli, Brian McCallahan, Jody Lang, and John McLaughlin. Does that sound right?
Sounds right.
Who's your
And
pick?
I do know that my buddy in the 289 Screamer in Kip Martin's old car, upset of the week against Brian Warner last week. He's still in, Tim Schmackpfeffer. So
Maybe I'm
not rooting for anybody except for you, Tim.
Maybe I'm not looking at the right thing then, because I don't see him on here.
In the JEGSportsnationals continuation, Superstock.
Yeah, that's a tough list of guys left in stock.
Oh yeah,
Who's your pick?
that's going to be interesting. I don't know. I think Jody Lang bounces back from his red light last week. He's probably pissed, and he's going to win the whole thing because he's the best driver ever.
I would argue that he's one of the best drivers to never win a championship. And you put yourself in that position that many times, it's gonna happen. I mean, it's a statistical oddity if you don't. I mean, he's a terrific driver. He's a fantastic driver given the situation that he's in with the car and the speed and everything that he's working with. I think he's a fantastic driver. He certainly deserves to win a championship. Whether that happens this year or not, we'll find out.
I think it does. I'm putting my money on it. Brian, $5. Jody Lang gonna win the national championship.
What happens if you put that guy in a fast car? Does he just know his, isn't that kind of what makes a good driver? Like, a good driver should be able to get into any car and win, right? So is it more of just the combo and the work he's done and how good his car works and how well he knows his car? Or could you put him in a factory style 9-second car? Would he be just as good?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I think there's certainly guys that like Jody that they're so used to chasing that it would probably be it's a totally different look. You're looking forward instead of looking back. You're judging the rate of closure a lot differently. I think he's a good enough driver. I think give him a little bit of time and he could acclimate to any car. But I think it's much easier to acclimate to a fast car than it is to acclimate to a slow car.
Let's put Mike in Bobby's car next year, and we'll see if he can make it through first round.
Let's take Jody Lang, put him in a 9-second car, and let's take the 9-second drivers, put them in 12-second cars, and we'll see who does better.
So that's like the
my
race.
money will be on Jody.
Is that the
chasing people
championship
down.
race? We'll put Justin in
Yeah.
Jody's car
Let's
and
have
Jody
them-
in Justin's car and see who can win.
Have them switch cars for that race. That'd be great.
Better put True Start on because somebody's red lighting.
Yeah. When you can do it in a 12-second car consistently, I mean, how many times do you see 12-second cars consistently winning things like he does? And I've read interviews on him. I try it, when the guy speaks, I try to take something in, and he was talking about how he's looking at, wind socks while he's going down track. He's very cognizant of what's going on when he's going down the track. He's so aware. That makes such great drivers. And then you have to know your spots out there. I'm sure he knows them. You got to be killer on the tree. He always is. I mean, I was surprised when he went red the other day because the guy is he's like always in the teens, consistent on the tree in two categories because he races super stock also. And his car's not very fast in super stock either. GTO automatic, I think he has like a Malibu or something. So I mean, that's why I put him up there because he's in the slow car. So he's one of my, obviously, as you could tell now, he's like one of my driving heroes because he's in the slow car. Gotta love those slow cars.
It's just a matter of perspective. I think I have a slow car. Everybody else in my class is faster than me. That's the only time it really matters
It's
is
all
in stock.
perception.
The heads up is the bigger. To me, that's the hardest part. Being the slow car in your class is worse than being the slow car at the track.
I just hide.
Was hide and seek your favorite game as a child, Bobby?
Yep. Hide and
Being
seek.
a Ford guy, I could see why.
Just hide on that ladder. You'll be fine. How many cars do you get out at those divisionals out there anyway? Where's your nearest divisional anyway?
Too many.
That'd be Brainerd or Earlville. There's what's Earlville normally close? There's 100 cars there pretty typically, isn't
Yeah,
it,
we
Mike?
get tons. Yeah, it's right around 100 usually for a divisional event.
I think the first time I went there last year, I want to say there was 12 cars in
Turning
D.
into
Should we make it so
Yeah,
that you
it's
qualify
kinda
like
turned
80
into-
cars? Like, what do you think about
No.
bringing that performance-based aspect back into it when you're never going to get? I mean, at Maple Grove, we can hit 128 stockers. But when's the last time you ever saw like you had to qualify to make the field?
Seen it happen, but it's very rare.
I know, so that's why I'm saying, should we bring that back? I mean, it's going to be difficult at a national event where they're only taking 50
I'd say
cars.
for national events.
I think that's how they should do the national event. That's how
Yeah.
you avoid some of the grade point stuff.
Well, how's that going to affect grade points? You get a grade point just by passing
Bring in
tech.
some incentive.
Well, no, I mean just as far as needing enough grade points. Like Brainerd, it's pretty much 6 grade points to get into stock. A lot of 100 cars get in, and then
It's
qualify.
like turning into 8 and 7 over here. Yeah, it's crazy. I
Yeah,
just
make
think
it some incentive to have to go fast to get in.
right,
It's part of the class.
right. Didn't it used to be class winners make the eliminator? What happened to that rule? When did that one change? Somebody on Facebook Live might know what year that changed.
Or my time.
Was it that long ago? Like the 80s or
I
90s?
think it was in the 70s.
70s that changed? Okay. Let's see if somebody can chime in on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting kind of all kinds of feedback on Facebook. We have Jody's the toughest driver with the slow car ever. He's the Dan Marino of the sport. Do you know who Dan Marino is, Mike?
Yes, he screwed over who was it? Ray Finkel. That's who it was. Remember when Dan Marino held the snap in that crucial Super Bowl and the laces were in? That's who Dan Marino is.
I just remember there was a kid in high school that got beat up all the time for liking Dan Marino.
Oh, God. You guys don't know your movies. Somebody on Facebook Live has to know the reference I just made, or I'm quitting.
Ace Ventura.
Oh, okay, good. Mans, you can stay on. Brian, hit the road.
I hated that guy. I refuse to watch those. Sorry. I'm all about stupid humor, but that crosses the line in so many ways.
Wait, now Steven Johnson's saying they got in for class winner back in 2006. Was this a recent rule that changed?
At Indy, that used to be a part of the U.S. Nationals, is if you won class. So if you weren't a natural qualifier, but you still won class, they would bring you into the 128 car field.
Okay, so it was just at Indy. It wasn't at every other national event in the country then.
No, I think years ago it may have been a part of something like that. Like I said, like pre my time, literally pre me being born. But at Indy, yeah, that was definitely the case. I mean, there was a lot of guys that would go there that they were the only car in their class, and you could run 30 under and make it in the show.
Wow.
What's been the biggest change? Like, think about that from 06 to today. Like, how much easier is it to go fast today than it was then?
That's a great question. There's so many components within the engines that have improved. I think from a technological perspective, we've got the benefit of the development that's taken place in pro stock, in NASCAR, and a lot of that is directly applicable to us. It probably doesn't seem like it, but pro stock works within a confinement. They've got a box of rules and a set of parameters that they have to work within, and that's really similar to stock eliminator. And it takes a long time for that information to finally trickle its way down. But a lot of the stuff that they've advanced in those classes makes its way to stock and super stock. And that's a lot of what's made these cars run better. It's not necessarily that, guys are cheating any differently than they ever have. Cylinder heads are still the same within reason to what they always were. But there's a tremendous amount of advancement in every component in the engine. I mean, you could work your way down and say that wrist pin technology has made engines run better because you can rev them higher with a more stable ring seal. And there's a lot of those little components that I think people just don't. If you're not building engines, you're not thinking about it. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, piston ring technology has advanced so far that you could take a motor that was run, Bobby DeArmond's first 9-second run, and you could rebuild that motor, and I'm sure that car could run 0.2 faster today than it did in 2001. There's just so much that's taken place.
So there's obviously an advantage for the combos that have been thrashed out over the years then.
There's certainly some advantage to it. I mean, I think you could make any combination today. It's time and money, right? I mean, it's however much time and however much money you want to spend on it. I think you could make most combos competitive. I mean, there's a lot of combinations that have been beat on hard for 40 years and are still competitive today. So it's a true testament to the development of components and systems and valve train and everything else that's a part of this entire package that make them more efficient and make them run better. And it's interesting because it's not just, there's never a free lunch. So I'll give you an example. Like in a big block Chevrolet, the dart block, you turn it into a great foundation instead of a stock iron block, but it's not as though you just put a dart block with all your same components inside and you're automatically going to pick up 10 horse. It provides you an opportunity to change something else to make it more efficient. So you get a dart block with a 60 millimeter cam journal and stock eliminator, and you get rid of your stock cam core, and you're able to change and make the motor more efficient, more stable, and that's how you can pick up power. So there's a lot of these components that you change one thing and it enables you to improve somewhere else. It's usually not get a new block and pick up 10 horse.
Right, yeah. Like catalogs would have you believe.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll buy this. It says picks up 10 horsepower. Yeah.
I thought you just put the sticker on and your car went faster.
Yeah, you would think.
The Ford Performance sticker. Hey, that sticker still pays money, okay?
It does. Sure does.
Just
But
imagine
all
if
the
they put
things
it on a
that-
fast car.
All the things that Mike just mentioned increase the cost of this category. And Brian, we're always talking about how we're going to get young people into this category. That's not doing a whole lot of good to get young people into the category, is it? When things are
I'd argue against that some though, Bobby, because like I literally know nothing about this when I came into it. I was able. I mean, don't get me wrong. Maybe I cheated. I didn't build my own motor. I talked to people that had. I called different people. Al Corda had parts there from one of his old LS1s. So the fact that I could go, it was sitting at the engine builder, have them put together. I bought these parts used, but it was all a working combination. Like, I don't know how much money I saved, and I don't really want to think about it, but just being able to buy a decent combo. Now, granted, I started with a turbo 350 transmission that wasn't very efficient, manual valve body, started with the motor, and I could run under the index. I mean, I was 20, 30 under the index, but I could at least go race. It was an intro to stock limited racing. And the fact that all the R&D's already been put in, like, it was a huge jump start. Now, to get competitive, you got to keep going. But you could almost argue now it's way cheaper to get in that way than to start from ground zero, building and buying every component and trying to figure it out. I mean, just because you spend money doesn't mean you're going faster in this thing.
Oh, well, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could show you shelves full of expensive parts that didn't make any power, didn't make it any better. And to be honest, I think in the development side, that's where all the money is spent. I mean, I can argue and prove if I wanted to say yes, we spent 3x the typical amount to learn something. And at the end of that learning process, I could duplicate that same end result for way less money, but it's the effort and the time that it took to get to that end result. So, I mean, camshafts are a great example. I mean, you could buy a million camshafts, and how long do you want to sit on the dyno and how many things do you want to try? But at the end of the day, I could spend $5,000 in camshafts. And if I was an engine builder, that's why engine builders charge money for their services, is they've provided that level of expertise, that level of knowledge. So instead of me going and spend $5,000 on camshafts, I can come to one of these, well reputable engine builders, and they're going to spec it into their engine the first time. So yes, it costs money. It really costs money if you're trying to do it yourself. If you're trying to pioneer and make headway, that's where the investment dollars come in, and that's where the time comes in. At the end of the day, if you're looking to go fast in most circumstances, unless you have access and the ability to think outside the box and to make some of those technology advancements, you are way money ahead going to a reputable engine builder. I mean, and we're at a great time right now where there's good engine builders on every coast and a lot of places in between. So you can buy good power, and it's not cheap by any means, but you're still money ahead versus trying to figure it out yourself.
Indeed. And somebody made a great point a couple of years ago that, on the forums, people say you got to work on your combo more, you got to spend more money, like things like that. And a guy made a point like, well, I'm not that mechanically inclined and I don't know how to work on my combo. So like I'm working on it I'm working overtime this week. I'm putting in extra hours at work to make the money to pay the engine builder, so that indirectly I am working on I'm working my ass off here at work to make the money required to play this game. So I give those guys respect also. And that's the way this is. Like you just said, you can do it yourself if you have the capability and the time, or you got to pay somebody else to do it. But you need the money, so you got to go put in the time at work to do that. So in the end, you're working on your combo.
This might be a false statement, but to me it seems like the fastest and the most consistent drivers are the ones that are putting in the sweat equity. Like, you can go spend all the money you want, buy the fastest, baddest combo and stock there is. But if you're not putting the time in it to know the car, dial the car, cut a light, stay green, all that stuff, it's not going to do you any good. The guys I think that are consistently in the winner circle are the ones that are putting in the most sweat.
Absolutely. And there's, Justin's a great example, as we've talked about him a little bit in this early in the podcast. Justin is a guy that he knows where his competencies are and his strengths are. His strength is really in his ability to drive well, obviously, and his other real core competency is making a car work really, really well. And so he's not an engine builder, he's not a transmission guy, he's not doing that work, but he selects the guys that are good at that, and he leaves that responsibility to them. He has great reliable engine power, and then he is really good at fine tuning a combination so that it's incredibly predictable, it's incredibly reliable and consistent. And then he can focus on doing what he's good at also, hit the tree and drive the straight. And he proves it every year that, he's a great driver, but he also has equipment that he can rely on. I think there's a lot of great drivers that, they just don't have the entire package. They have a car that lets them down for one reason or another. It spins the tires or throws them for a loop some round where the thing picks up 500s out of nowhere. Those things happen, and that's just kind of that next level of being competitive.
Yeah, controlling those types of things, keeping them from happening. So great preparation definitely will help in that aspect. And yeah, Bryan, if getting to know your car, and you should always be putting in the sweat and man hours of getting your weather station, your predictions down, I think if you have fuel injection, you should be able to plug your computer in and make a couple adjustments. You shouldn't have to have a tuner with you at every track that you go to and just rely on he or she to tune your car in between rounds, because that can make it difficult in case that person can't show up at some point or another. But the strictly mechanical aspect of, the engine building process, if you absolutely have to leave that to a professional, and goes back to what I said, you have to work overtime at your regular 9-to-5 job in order to pay for that professionalism. That's where I'm talking about, just the strictly mechanical aspect.
Yeah, I worked for a pretty successful man, what has been probably 10, 15 years ago. And he gave me a great piece of advice. He said, do what you're really, really good at. Hire somebody to do what you're bad at. And, the learning curve on that, I'm pretty sure I could take my motor apart, put it back together, and it's going to start. Now, is it going to make 275 wide open passes down the quarter? I'll stick with starting. It's like when you're in small engines class in high school. All right, we're going to take this apart and put it back together, and hopefully it starts. If it starts, you pass. Well, I think 90% of the people out there could do that, but, I can't afford to have a disaster going on the track, so I need to try to cover my bases and make sure that's as solid as it can be, because if my motor blows up, I'm probably done. I don't have a unlimited budget where I could just go throw another one together overnight. It's probably going to take a couple of years to try to put all the pieces back together. So now
I'm in the same boat with you there. Yeah.
I want to learn as much as I can about it. As far as tuning, when I've been the most successful, I don't touch nothing. I don't even like to. When I show up and make that first qualifying pass, I hate to touch anything. When I've been successful, this is what it is. I'm happy with it. Car's the same. I drive the same. Nothing changes. Man, every time I make changes, something stupid happens. And I think some of that's the learning curve too, learning what the effect is from each change. That's part of learning through the sport. Unfortunately, when you have potential heads ups and trying to move on the ladder, you have to make changes, and that's what really separates the men from the boys, I think, in this sport, is you have to be able to roll with the punches and know this change does this change does that. And that goes back to the sweat equity too. Just spending time in the car. You could spend all the money in the world and build a faster motor, but if you're not spending money on gas and going and making rounds, you're making passes, it's not going to help you.
And I think one thing that a lot of guys, I assume, I guess, probably don't put as much attention to as some of the more successful drivers is note taking. I make my own logbooks, and the amount of data and the amount of information that I document after every run, I want to be able to, if I get into a situation where overnight the air changes dramatically, or if I had to change a converter, or if anything happens, I can go back to my notes and say, this change does that. So I at least have a really good educated guess of where I'm going should something happen. Because at the end of the day, if you're not making any changes, you should be able to predict what's going to happen. But if you have big weather changes, if you have any kind of engine change or converter or tranny change, that's what really defines the guys that know what's going on versus a lot of us that you make a change and then it's just you're throwing a dart at the wall. So you need to take notes. You need to document things, and weather is incredibly important. And I think there's a lot of factors that go into dialing a race car that if you don't know and if you're not asking the questions, you might just be missing out on them. And I think what I learned at a young age was I gravitated to people that won a lot. I mean, when I was a little kid, my dad was successful, so I watched and learned as much as I could from him. And I spent a lot of time as a young kid, like, 8, 9, 10 years old, spending time with Edmund and Scotty Richardson, Jeff Taylor and Willie Evans and Gary Stinnett. And I gravitated to guys that won, and I learned everything I could from what they were doing. And if you just sit in your trailer after every run and you don't think about it, or you don't document it, or you don't put any effort into this, it's hard to improve.
Definitely. That's what I was just going to, right when we both started talking at the same time, was note taking, and you hit it right on the head there. But national events where you're running, you have a first round on a Saturday and we don't know what the weather's going to be like. You have another round Sunday morning. Justin Lamb put up a 10-pack in that Sunday morning run. There's no time run leading up to that. It's just exactly, you have to know your car. You have to have good notes. And now you're throwing converter changes into the mix too. You really got to have notes for things like that. So is it safe do you use Crew Chief Pro, Mike?
I do. And I think Don Higgins has programmed in some really helpful and useful formulas within his program. I used it. The reason I originally purchased it was because of the capabilities to integrate within our weather station and be able to text you or page you at the time those predictions. So I have my own formulas that I put into it, and you can utilize it for that function as well. So I use my own formulas, and then I just have it send me text messages every 3 minutes or whatever the time frame is. So, when you're in the staging lanes, you've got a good pulse of what's happening, what's changing with the weather, what's changing with conditions. Because there's a lot of times we can go sit in the staging lanes and all of a sudden you got an oil down in the class in front of you and you're sitting there for an hour and a half. And unless you've got some current information coming in, or you go back to your trailer to look at it, things could change a lot.
It's funny, we keep talking about, it's too expensive, and everybody beats it. It is an expensive hobby. But at the end of the day, there's things you can do to streamline the process. I didn't have a weather station. I didn't have Crew Chief Pro. So I bought the Crew Chief Pro that has the weather station built into it. Because I literally had no idea how to dial a car. New combination, knew nothing. And just, to me, not having to write down the weather on every time slip or trying to keep track of that, and the way it organizes it. Because I think the other thing we haven't talked about is a crew. I go to the track by myself. Once in a while, I can convince somebody to come with, and just somebody to enter the data into Crew Chief Pro makes it so much easier to keep your head in the game. To be there by yourself, to write down all the notes and keep track of all that, it's a lot. And that's where I think Crew Chief Pro, like a lot of guys, to invest into that, it's not that much money, but it really helps make and dial the car better. It helps make the note taking better. For me, just having the weather data automatically go in and record it with the runs. So when I go home and I get a chance to look at it, okay, this was my average reaction time, or this was at this weather, it does this, or this lane, you can kind of compare it. To have some crew to be able to help you, to me, that crew chief replaced one person just writing that stuff down, and it really made it a lot simpler. I am not a super organized person, so as little steps like that, that's $1,000 you can spend that makes it way easier to dial your car, way easier to record the data. It's putting the money in the right spots, I think, is what really helps maybe get the cost down, but it's also going to help you be more successful.
Yeah, and I like the database features with that. You put anything in those comments fields after a run, and then you can search that up. That's, some other point in time. Do you have a favorite weather station, Mike? I've been meaning to ask this for the last couple weeks. Like, I use Altalab. There's Altalab, there's Computech, there's Davis, there's Altronics. Who's using what out there?
Oh, we've had the same Altalab system for, it feels like 20 years. I don't know that it's been really that long, but it's been a long time. And we'll send it in to get it calibration checked, and I think it's a great weather station. To your point, Altronics makes a nice one. Davis makes some nice stuff. Computech. I think it's whatever you can get comfortable with. I think they're all really good, and I think they can all integrate into the various crew chief systems and things like that. But yeah, we've used Altalab with really good luck. I used to use the pager function a long time ago, and it worked great. Once the Crew Chief Pro software came out and you could integrate to do text messaging, that was a little bit more convenient for me. So we just have a hotspot in our trailer. We just use, one of my phone or my dad's phone, use it as a hotspot in the trailer, and then carry the other person's phone with you when you're in the staging lanes.
Right. That's a good idea. We have trouble with internet connections at national events, though. When the pros set up all their stuff, do you have trouble getting like signal? That's been an issue with me everywhere I've gone. And then like at the end of the day, when they shut down for the day, it's like, boom, all of a sudden we have internet again. So I've always been afraid to try the text messaging because I can't get signal when I need it.
I haven't had that problem. I've had pretty good luck with it. And I think between my parents and I, we have Verizon and Sprint. So we have a couple options if one of them isn't working so well.
Maybe Tesla's looking for a sponsor. Don't they have the new satellite internet that can stream down to race trailers?
That'd be nice.
Maybe I should get rid of Cricket then. Maybe that's the cause of all my issues. I'm cheap.
But I think a lot of this conversation, I mean, there's to your point, Brian, I mean, Crew Chief is a great software, and I'm sure there's others like it. And it can improve your program. And I think it's one of those next steps of, do you need it at, a weekend combo where you're going and you're qualifying in the morning and you're running the entire race that day? It's probably not as required as it would be over a national event period where you're qualifying on, in the old days, you qualify Thursday, maybe have a round or two Friday, and then, rounds Saturday and Sunday. You've got a greater opportunity for change over the course of 4 days than you do over a 12-hour period. So I think, for a lot of guys that are running a lot of combos and single day events, it's a great tool to have, but I think you can certainly be just as competitive, with a temperature and humidity and barometer gauge and an old, weather calculating instrument that you can sit and physically calculate the density altitude, and you can get to the same result, very affordably. But it's just that next level of automation that makes it a little bit quicker and a little bit more streamlined.
All right, Brian, you writing all this down? You need some investments for next season.
Yeah, I'm looking for sponsors. Bobby, does your math tutoring want to sponsor my race car?
Sure. ImproveMyMath.com. That's a sponsor of this show, as well as Brian. What do you do, Brian? Brian sells something.
Yep, Anderson Ag Service for all your farming needs.
Robert Fazio Math Tutoring for all your math tutoring needs. No, but seriously, that's what I do. ImproveMyMath.com. Brian, do you have a website? AndersonAgService.com. Okay. And WhyMillbank.com is the sponsor of our podcast because he provides everything. Craig Weinberg.
I don't know, what would you do? I think Craig's could almost do the show on himself. We're going to educate him, and he'll be our fill-in interviewee.
Well, it's been insane just listening to, because I know about zero about racing, and specifically this version of it. And so it's been really kind of wild to sit and listen to this, and just the technical side of it. And you guys are talking about the equipment that's improved the game, so to speak. It's crazy to think that if you document all of the data, that will then give you, because it is, I mean, it's a computer essentially. It gives you what you put in. Bobby and Mike, you both are lifelong racers, right? I mean, you've been in this since you were wee ones. Did you ever, in your careers, both of you, ever think that you would be able to have so much data available to you instantly? When did that concept really become real?
As a kid, I certainly didn't. When when I was younger, we had there was a company called Nova that made it was basically like a little calculator that you would input temperature, humidity, and barometer, and it would help calculate all these functions. And it's all we had. I mean, it was a manual process, but it got you pretty close. But that's what has taken our sport from in the 90s, early 90s, I could even say, if you could get within 300 of your dial in, maybe even 4 or 5, you were a pretty darn good driver, and you were pretty good at predicting what was going to happen. And reaction times were less consistent than they are today, less precise, I would say. But the evolution of all this stuff, that's what makes racing hard, is everything has evolved so far that things are so much more consistent, so much more predictable, and the tools that we have at our disposal. I mean, stock and super stock has turned into some of the best bracket racing that there is. I mean, you can go down some of these lists, and there's days where you're on both sides of the track, and guys have fantastic reaction times, and they're running dead on or within one. That wasn't the case 30 years ago, and that's what's made this sport fun and a real big challenge.
Yeah, indeed. And I mean, when I was young and my dad raced super stock back in the 80s, I mean, we didn't have a weather station. It was just go talk to the guy you're pitted next to, see if he's got something, and pick a number. I mean, it was as old school as you could get. And I didn't race junior dragsters. I didn't get into racing till about 2006-ish. So dad raced super stock until about 1992, 93. That car sat in our garage from 1993 until 2009. So when I came back to the game, I mean, we used to go watch a little bit here and there, but when I came back to it and just was driving my car to the brackets and running street eliminator, again, I was pitting next to somebody that had a weather station, and that's how I was learning. And then me being more tech savvy than my father, I mean, he's way more mechanically savvy than me. I took a liking to it right away. I was like, oh, computer, prediction, software, database, spreadsheets. That's all me. That's like what I live for. So, and then fuel injection, learning that. I mean, I am the tech. I really enjoy this aspect of it. So yeah, Autolab Crew Chief Pro, that was right up my alley. And I've been there ever since, like 2010-ish.
So was it less about the technology like not being there, and is it just more accessible and more affordable now? That if you had the ability and had the cash on hand, you could have gotten this information, or was it just not available back then?
Really just wasn't available. I mean, none of this stuff really existed. I don't remember. I mean, as a kid, obviously laptops were very expensive, and they didn't, in a sportsman category, I don't think you could have walked the pits and found a laptop in anybody's trailer. That wasn't a thing. I can't even tell you when we started bringing a laptop to the racetrack, because even, my dad was pretty early into data acquisition and acquiring, information from the race car. So we had an on-car data acquisition system, but you'd plug it into a dot matrix printer and it would feed out. You had to carry a box of paper, and it would just and you had all this information on a big printout after the run. And so that was data acquisition. You didn't even have a laptop to grab and interpret that data.
All you were missing were the homing pigeons to bring your dial into the lanes.
It was a lot different time, but at the same time, there's always going to be people that really work at it and they figure out how to have an advantage.
Was it more pure back then when it was less computerized?
I think it was more pure. You could say that, but at the same time, there was way more. I shouldn't say there was way more. There was people that dominated more. If you look back in the 90s, in stock and super stock, Jeff and Charlie Taylor, Jeff more in the 90s, but he dominated. I mean, he understood the game better than most people, and he had a competitive advantage. And the Richardson brothers, Edmund and Scotty, same thing. They understood it better than most people, and they had a competitive advantage because number one, they raced a lot, they tested a lot, they understood what components made a difference, and they were always on that leading edge of what was available. But guys just didn't have a lot of this stuff available to them back then.
So did you have to be like just a dead on driver, like your operation, or did they just wrench the cars properly?
Both. I mean, I think the number one key to a lot of this stuff has been reaction time. I mean, if you're not good on the starting line, your odds are out the window for long-term success. So I mean, the guys that have always quote unquote dominated, have always been really good at the starting line, and the difference being, they understood how to dial a car better just for various conditions, or they had various components, different torque converters and different componentry that help make their car more consistent, more dialable. I mean, if you think back to, years and years ago, it was hard for a superclass car to cut a good light on a 4/10 tree. There was guys that understood how to make the car react faster, or how to pop the tire out of the beam, prior to some of the tools that they had available to them. So you could have a competitive advantage, and you could have 500ths in reaction time advantage over anybody. And that makes a huge difference. And so that stuff was just guys that they caught on to something and they understood it. And there's a lot that can go into, conversation around dialing techniques, and especially in the 90s when cars weren't as competitive, or they weren't as consistent as they are today. People hadn't ever heard of holding or dialing soft, but Scotty and Edmund Richardson, they were very good at that. They would carry numbers, and in an 890 category, they'd be going 886, 887, and they knew what it took to get to their number, and they knew that they were going to be as good or better than somebody else on the starting line. And so they just played the game really, really well, and they dominated.
Wow.
Learning, Craig?
Oh yeah.
Like it?
Yeah. Brian will have to let me go drive his car.
Come with him to the track.
He's been trying to get me to go take pictures of him, so.
Oh, even better. Did you guys know that there was a national open, actually two national opens in Atlanta this weekend? Just wanted to mention that. On Saturday in stock, John Livingston took the win, and in super stock, Victor Cagnazzi. And then Sunday, Roy Caraway took the win in stock. He had a 3-pack in the final, by the way. And in super stock on Sunday, Dane Pearson took the win. This is 8th mile drag racing. It was a National Open Series started by Rich Schaefer of Division II when IHRA quit class racing. It gave a place to race for the IHRA crate motor cars. So they can go to these events. They receive NHRA grade points and a Wally. There's a point system with a championship, and the championship is recognized at the D2 banquet. So just wanted to throw that out there. Also, Mason-Dixon stock, super stock combo race that's been going on for 20-something years. Sadly, rained out on Sunday. Saturday, they always do a gambler's race for the stock, super stock combo. Brent Darrick, who always does well at this race, he won the Saturday gambler's race combo. Yesterday was rained out, unfortunately. I don't know if there's a make-up date for that. And the East Coast Stock Super Stock race has now been rescheduled. This is Dave Lay's Division I Stock Super Stock Association. This has been rescheduled for Sunday, November 8th at Atco Dragway. Anybody that wants to get one last shot at a Stock Super Stock combo race, come on out. Support Atco Dragway. Support Dave Lay's association. We're hoping not, but it could be the last time you ever race at Atco Dragway. We don't know where the future of this track lies. So Sunday, November 8th, Atco Dragway, East Coast Stock Super Stock. Purse is always increased for this event. This is the one that used to be held at Englishtown. It's going to be at Atco this year. $100 to race, payable at Dave Lay's trailer. So anybody that was in Mason-Dixon, now they have a chance to come they're not competing with each other to get a car count. Let's get this car count as high as we possibly can. Bryan, what do you got?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. My mind's still kind of reeling. Man, we've talked about a lot of stuff today. I just wanted to, one thing I want to touch on. We appreciate everybody listening. We appreciate the feedback. One thing you could do, if you're listening to an Apple device, what would really help us out is ratings. I think there's been a few people rating, but write a review. Write a review, give us a rating. If you like us, say what you like about it. If you don't like us, say what you like about it. Just help us
If
out.
you like us, my name's Robert Fazio. If you don't like us, my name's Bryan Anderson.
But that'll really help. So if you're on an Apple device, just go into the podcast, leave a review. Like I said, type something in, give a rating. That really helps us with our rankings on Apple. We've really enjoyed doing this. Like I said, if you could help us do that, that'd be great. If you want to find us, we've got some comments or critiques, or maybe you just want to say, hey, you know what, you guys are awesome. And I want to have you guys do advertising for us, sponsoring. We're always looking for help like that. We're looking to improve it. Takes a fair amount of technology, and thank you, Y Millbank and Craig Weinberg, for helping us do this. But there's a few things we'd like to keep changing, so we're looking for help wherever we can. ClassRacingToday.com. Go ahead. Our email address is classracingtoday@gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram at classracingtoday. More importantly, go to Apple, leave a review, give us a rating, and that would be pretty awesome.
Oh, and thank you to everybody that interacts on the Facebook Live. We try to keep up. We try to interact back with you. So if we didn't get to something that you said or wrote, sorry. It's not personal. We're just trying to keep up, trying to, interact with you and try to keep the show going at the same time. But we really love when people are on there during the show. So thank you very much.
And thanks, Mike, for coming on.
You bet. Thanks for having me, guys. It's fun.
I feel like every time you're on, I learn a lot. So
Right. Mike's probably going to be a recurring. Every once in a while, we got to get a smart guy on here. So
I've stepped my game up. I'm going to get replaced.
I don't know if I'm smart. I've just been around it a long time, and I've been a student of the sport. I try and listen a lot and just pay attention to what's going on.
Awesome. Well, we'll catch you guys next time.
All right. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Until next time, have a good week. Hopefully see you at ATCO November 8th.
Excellent. All right, we're clear on the record. We're still live on Facebook if you want to chat with anything. Mike, if you have to head out, you certainly can.
All right. Off to the meeting.
Awesome.
All right, Mike. Have a good day. Thanks for coming.
Thanks. You guys too. See ya.
See ya.
All right, thanks a lot. Facebook Live, you guys are great. We will catch you next time. Have a great day.